Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? There's quite a few times that happens to bands where they're kind of ahead of the curve. You know, I was listening to, I went down, talking of rabbit holes, I went down a Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young rabbit hole. A rabbit hole I was revisiting as a slightly older rabbit, and because I saw that Crazy Horse were back together for a tour, and I thought, wow, that reminds me of all that old stuff. And my God, it took me back to my youth as well. But I ended up listening to the David Crosby album, if only I could remember my name. And what a marvelous, wonderful, fragile, delicate piece of work that is. You know, it's so carefree compared with modern music, any kind of modern music. You know, it's got. Are you familiar with the album?
I'm not at all. No.
All right.
Check it out.
David Crosby was one of the guys at the centre of a sort of movement that included Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Joni Mitchell, the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, all those kind of bands, and they all kind of hung out and worked at various times on different albums. And David Crosby made that album in 1971, and his next album was in the 80s, 89 or something, I think, or maybe even more recent than that. So he only ever made one album, but he was obviously in Crosby, Stills and Nash and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and he guested on various things. But he was at the heart of inventing that harmonic style that they used and the Grateful Dead used. Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young had their own particular version of it, which I would really love to know more about. I must investigate it. But the reason I mentioned that album, the David Crosby album, is that it was ridiculed at the time. People didn't get it. People thought it was a throwaway piece of nonsense, and it was roundly criticised by almost everybody. But over the years, as time goes on, it's become more and more of a classic. And now when you listen to it, it sounds like music from Middle Earth or something. It sounds like it's coming from a magical kingdom that no longer exists, a youthful kind of innocence, you know? Which I think it actually was, because it was the burgeoning of something. I guess by 1971, the Summer of Love was a long distant memory for those that had experienced it. But still, in all, it was the ethos. Bless you. The ethos of it was still there, you know, and the wonderful guitars and harmonies. So I started listening. I thought, well, if there's that gem, that nugget of wonderfulness in amongst this, there must be other stuff. And I realised that there isn't really. They fucked it up more times than they ever made it work, you know. Which I wonder if that was why that album didn't really get much attention or much praise at the time, because it was just seen as another kind of slightly fucked up version of something that could be really, really good. I don't know, but the recording's very basic, and quite a lot of the songs kind of start in a ragged way and end in a ragged way. You know, the sort of, you can tell that they're in it. But there was a wonderful performance, actually, David Crosby with a school, performed at a school for charity towards the end of his life. And he had a bunch of good musicians, as well as some of the school children in the school choir and things like that. And they did some absolutely wonderful songs. I'll try and send you the link. But that's a great album as well, and one that I had completely missed. I've got all the other good ones. I've got the Neil Young Crazy Horse ones around that same time, which I really like. You know, things like Zuma and stuff like that. And
I love Zuma.
Yeah, there's some brilliant stuff that I think Neil Young carried the torch for me, and it was just a shame that I don't really like Stephen Stills that much. I think he was their Paul McCartney. You know, he did everything. He was just going to take over, and I think Crosby was the kind of person that would just, if he saw that happening, he would just step back, you know.
Yeah.
And just leave.
Well,
it
yeah.
to it.
So it's funny. Dave Crosby's a musician who I've been told I look like a lot, especially
a little bit, yeah.
When I don't have the beard. Like one time I was at a Primus concert, and we ate a whole bunch of mushrooms. So we were like we could barely sit in the chair. We were so fucked up. And And I was sitting there at the intermission because Primus usually plays 2 sets, so they give you like a 30-minute intermission between the 2 sets. And I didn't want to leave my chair. I didn't even go outside for smoke any weed or anything. I just decided to sit there in my chair. And it was like the intermission was almost over. They're just calling people back to their seats. And for some reason, I popped into my head, I'd never paid for parking. I parked in a paid lot down the road, but never paid for it because I was so excited about the concert and my friends were there in the parking lot. So I'm sitting there going like, oh my God, I might get out of this concert in 2 hours and my car might be gone, like might be towed away. So I decided I have to go find my car and pay for it, right? So I just jumped out of my seat and ran out of the theater. Didn't tell anybody why I was doing it because I didn't feel I had time to discuss anything. I just ran to my car. And I got outside. There was some guy who looked way more fucked up than I'd looked or felt. And he just started sprinting after me. And as he was sprinting after me, he's screaming, don't, they already took it. It's already gone. Like, he just kept telling me it's already gone. And I'm like, how does he know? How does he know they already took my car? And he just kept chasing me. And I ran faster and faster. And then he started screaming, why are you here, David Crosby? Why are you here, David Crosby? And he kept screaming that as he was chasing after me. And and then so like my friends now, like they'll say that to me, and you know, especially if we're all fucked up, they'll be like, why are you here, David Crosby?
I can see that now that you say without the beard, but you had the mustache. If you had the mustache, that's a very David Crosby tash. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, yeah, because you've got quite a gap in the middle there, and I think Crosby's was like that. Yeah. And the way it falls down at the corners of your mouth is like Crosby. Yeah. For those listening, I'm describing a mustache here. It's not exactly classic podcast material, but
I'm sure if Frank was here, we could talk about mustaches.
Oh yeah, Frank was the king of the mustache. He was the.
He was.
Yeah,